Recently, my oldest son, who drives an older Dodge truck, it's 1 year older than my Suburban, so it's not like antique, but it's had a pretty rough life. So some people might call it a bit of a jalopy. But you know, when you're a 20-year-old guy and you've got your first truck and you didn't have to spend a lot of money out of pocket to get it, it's not a bad deal. But it could use some cosmetic prettying up. Runs good, sounds good, looks like junk. But he had a chance to buy some chrome wheels to kind of jazz it up a little bit. And so he found these wheels on Craigslist. He saved up the money to pay for them himself. He drove out and picked up the wheels and he brought them back, and they sat in my garage for almost 3 months. Why? Because the wheels he bought were bigger than the tires on the truck. I mean, the wheels fit the truck, but the rubber, the tire part of the wheels that were on the truck would not fit on the wheels that he bought. So now he has these new wheels that he got a good deal on, but he can't put them on his truck until he saves up money again to buy tires to fit the wheels that go on the truck. We don't think sometimes through the whole process of what a decision is going to cost us. And decisions can cost us in a lot of different ways. They can cost us in relationships. They can cost us financially. They can cost us time. They can cost us running down the wrong path in a long direction, and then realizing just how far down the wrong path we've gone. And depending on the nature of that decision, sometimes you can back up and go the right way. Sometimes you have to make a U-turn and come back through everything you went through to get to where you are in order to get to the position so you can go the right way. And sometimes there is no way to get there from here. All you can do is start over or blaze a new trail from the place that you found yourself to the place that you know you're supposed to be. Again, this happens in relationships. It happens to companies. I remember hearing, I believe it was in Thinking for a Change, or How Successful People Think. I confused those two books. They're both by John Maxwell. One is the full version, one is the edited version. I believe it was in Thinking for a Change, the bigger version of the books. He tells a story about a company that started off in a specific line of work. This company manufactured only this one thing. But over a period of time, they went from making this one thing to making swimming pools and digital handheld computer games and all kinds of other stuff. And if I could recall the name of the company, I would say it. You would probably know it. But the bottom line is they diversified so much that they forgot how to be profitable and successful at anything. They had their fingers in so many different things, trying to do so many different things. They lost focus. Well, when you lose focus and you're still trying to invest in all these expanded ideas, the challenge is that you begin to bleed or hemorrhage cash, talent, attention, ability. And what we really have to do, whether we're talking about our walk with our faith, or we're talking about our relationships, or we're talking about our education, or we're talking about our entrepreneurial ideas, or we're talking about leadership as a general concept, we have to maintain focus. We've got to choose that one lion, as Mark Batterson puts it, and conquer that lion. And we may have to chase that lion down. We may have to chase him into a snowy pit, chase him into a pit on a snowy day to slay that lion. But if we're either running from that lion or trying to catch 3 lions, we'll catch nothing. We'll never conquer the lion that we're running from, and we'll never conquer 3 lions at once. You have to pick one. There was an old phrase, and I don't even remember where it comes from. It sounds like something maybe the ancient Chinese would say, or American Indians would say. The man who chases 3 rabbits is called hungry. The man who chases 3 rabbits is called hungry. Why? Because he doesn't really have a plan. He's chasing whatever comes along for the day. He's trying to chase 3 things at one time, which means he's probably going to catch nothing. Again, if that's your education or that's your relationships. There's a television show called Cheaters. The whole basis of the show is that people are caught in affairs trying to have a relationship with more than one person at a time at an intimate level. Now, it's reasonable to have social relationships with more than one person at a time. In fact, we call that socialized. A normal human being can socialize with multiple people. Sometimes in a networking environment, that may be 5 or 6 people at a time, or speaking to a crowd, it may be a few dozen people at a time. But ongoing, intimate relationships are designed to be between 1 and 1. Not 1 and 2, or 1 and 3, or 1 and 5, or 2 and 3. That's not the way they were designed. And so those types of relationships, just like a job, just like an education, require that you focus on one track, one path, one course, one determination at a time. Now, that doesn't mean that you can't dedicate some time in your day to this task, and some time in your day to this task, and some time in your day to this task, and still efficiently complete them. But you do need focus on the task at hand. You've got to measure the cost. What's it going to take me to accomplish this? What will I have to lay out in the form of expenses, whether that's cash, or it's time, or it's resources, or it's energy? What will it take me to pull this off? And will the payoff be big enough in the end that it's been worth the investment? Now, relationally, we can find ourselves in a quandary with that set of questioning. Because from time to time, you run across those misfits of life, and you look at all the places in life, and you think, well, these people are in my life because I work for them, and so I have to have them in my life, and I have to maintain good relationships with them, or I won't have a paycheck. And these people are in my life because they are potential business partners for the future, that if I ever lose this job or need to expand this job, that these relationships will help feed my career and feed my opportunities and feed my income. And then these people, well, they're family. And so we've got a lot invested in life together up to this point. And I love them and they love me. And we have to put up with each other's quirks. And that's going to take work and labor and effort. But it's worth it. And then you have the misfits. That person you met at Starbucks, the homeless guy that you gave a couple of bucks to, the stranger that walked up to you at church and just started talking. And those people don't really fit into any of those categories. They're not family or friendly relationships that you've established over a long period of time. They're not business partners or network partners that you want to cultivate that relationship into something else. They're not people that you're required to work with. But they are people, according to Scripture, that we're required to love. Love your neighbor as yourself. Those are tough relationships. They're tough to decide how much time will I invest in them. Some of those people have a similar mindset, and so it's real easy to cut to the chase and find out in just a few minutes whether or not an investment in that relationship will pay off long term. Some of them, in a brief period of time, you can determine they're just here to use you. They see you as a stepping stone to somebody else or a stepping stool to somebody else. They want to climb over the top of your head and keep moving. Some have the Jezebel spirit, and they just want to cling to you to suck all the life out of you to make themselves look and feel more important. All of those are types of relationships where the cost of engaging in that relationship may be higher than you want to pay. And you know, for every rule, there's an exception. In building a business or building a home or building a plan of any sort, almost every good counselor or coach will tell you, I want to see your budget first. Put it on paper. Let's look at the actual eventuality of having this task completed. Whether you're going to build a barn or you're going to build a sales organization, I want to see what you believe it's going to cost you to complete the project. I want to see the last screw and the last hinge on the bottom of the front door. How much is that screw going to cost? And if your budget isn't that detailed, then your plan is not going to succeed. Simple as that. If your budget for your sales team doesn't include the staplers for each person on your sales team, then your detail isn't enough for your plan to succeed. Pretty simple rules. If the relationship you're going to invest in this person is going to cost you buying them coffee, buying them groceries, giving them rides to strange places, phone calls in the middle of the night, emotional strain on your other relationships, time and attention away from the things that are going to bring about success and accomplishment in your life, if this relationship is going to demand that much of you, is it worth the investment? Pretty easy rules to follow. Walk through the process. Ask the question, is this a clingy, needy type of a person? Is this a person to whom I will give everything and get nothing in return? If that's true, and you're okay with that, that's fine. That's all good. There are those people that we acknowledge early on in the relationship. This is not going to be an exchange type relationship. This is going to be a give relationship. Even in those kind of relationships, you've got to set boundaries and go, I will give up to this amount of time. I will give up to this amount of emotional energy. I will give up to this amount of time away from my other relationships. I will give up to this amount of money. And at that point, I have to move on. I can only invest so much because I'm taking away from everything else. And we have to be honest and realistic about that. And a person who doesn't measure the cost of the relationship, the job, the career track, the educational track, the new sales project, the new house they're going to build, the new company they're going to build, the person who doesn't measure the cost of those things first doesn't at least, at absolute minimum, mentally walk through down to the last screw and the cost of paper clips or staples or minutes on the phone. The person who doesn't do that will find themselves running hither and yon chasing three rabbits. They're going to find their lives distracted, unfocused. They're going to pay a lot up front with the hopes that one day they'll play later. Or they're going to find themselves playing with so many different things that the price to pay later will be huge. There's a commercial that comes on, I believe it's an advertisement for Angie's List maybe, or something like that, one of those good contractors type lists. And in the commercial, they're mocking the fact that the contractor's saying, well, that's a load-bearing wall. Yeah, we'll take that out. We'll get rid of that. And it's going to take probably 6 to 8 weeks longer than whatever we write down here, but you're okay with that. And budgets, who needs a budget? We'll just keep going until you don't have any money left. And the husband and wife are sitting at the table going, yeah, that sounds like a great plan. Another one is a radio ad that I hear from time to time that's a mockery of having an emergency plan. And he says to the kids, well, we have flashlights, right? And they're like, have no idea where they are. He's like, great. And we have batteries for the flashlights. They're like, yeah, but they're all dead. Great. And we know what our escape plan is. Yeah, I'm going out the back door. I'm going out the roof. And we know where we're going to meet. And they all lift someplace different. And he says, great, sounds like we have no plan. Obviously, that's satire. It's designed to mock the plan, to inspire you to have a plan. You should have a plan for your relationships. Am I dating this person in year number 7 and wondering why we're not married yet? Doesn't sound like you have a plan. You should get a plan. You should talk about what the goals of your relationship are. Are you just here to occupy each other's time? I'm not judging that. If that's what you're here for, if that's what you want to do, then that's fine. But if your end game is to be married and have children and move on with life, then you probably should come to an agreement on that plan, or come to an agreement to plan to do something different. Again, that's not my decision, and I'm not judging yours. I'm just saying you should probably have a plan for that relationship. If you have a person that always abuses you, always takes advantage of you, doesn't do what they say they're going to do, they lie to you on a regular basis, you should have a plan to exit that relationship, unless you're okay with giving in that relationship because you're so full in all the other ones. There are those people in our lives. Sometimes they're family, sometimes they're strangers, sometimes they're just people that God has said, I want you to love this one, and I want you to love this one sacrificially. Love them until it hurts you so that you understand what I see in you. If that's what you're told to do, you should do what you're told to do. I said a while ago, there's an exception to every rule. Having a plan is the rule. Knowing how long I'll put up with this. How long will I stay in this job? What is the plan for the next job? How long will I continue this ministry? What is the next ministry? How will I transition from this to that? What will I do next? What will it cost me? How much do I need to prepare before I launch that? What things need to go into place? How much time will it take to invest in that? All of those things go into having a plan. And it's really nice when you can look down the road and say, I have a plan, and I believe that this plan is exactly what I'm supposed to be doing. I look at all my gifts and all my talents and all my relationships and all my resources, and that is the culmination of all of those things coming into play. That's the ideal scenario. Now we know, and I believe it was Napoleon who said, the best battle plans in the world last about 15 seconds on the battlefield. The best battle plans in the world last about 15 seconds on the battlefield. Why? Because life is fluid. Life changes. Life throws things at us that we never expected. I didn't plan for my bank account to get hacked. As a result of having not planned for that, it left us in quite a quandary just before Thanksgiving. Made for a rough week. There were a lot of friends that came along and bailed us out, and we're very, very thankful for that. There are other things in life that come at you, the death of a loved one, the loss of a job, the change of a policy. I know companies that by the change of a policy, I believe it was one of the guest speakers at James Malinchek's event used to own a company who all they did was send faxes. And in the day of the fax, yes, young people, I know you don't know what a fax is. It's like a printer that prints things out from your phone, only it was actually connected to your phone line. And so people would put paper in on one side, and it would digitally transfer that image from the paper through the phone line and spit it out on the other side on another phone device called a facsimile machine or a fax machine. And that fax machine, when they started cropping up in everybody's businesses, there was a database of phone numbers for everybody that had a fax machine. And there was a business model that said, you send us your sales document, your flyer, your poster, your coupons, and we have a database of X number of thousands of fax receiving devices, we'll send it to all of them. That was their business model. So you could send your document to 100,000 people or 5,000 people. You could pick by zip code. You could pick by the type of business. You could pick by just about any select, like you would do direct mail, and they would send a fax to them. And then one morning, an executive order from the president was announced on CNN. And the executive order was, several people had got together from the small business industry and said, these people are just wasting our fax paper, and that stuff is expensive. It used to come on a curly spool. And so the thermo paper that came out of there would cost you $50 or $60 to refill your paper. It wasn't like $6 worth of regular plain paper. And so when you would come in and there'd be 8 or 10 feet of that paper on the floor because you received all these faxes overnight, most people who own businesses were very upset about that. The amount of money that they spent getting junk they didn't ask for. It didn't mean the coupons weren't worth having, but it didn't mean it was a cost for them that they didn't plan for. So they started a lobby, and they won. And they got the president to sign an executive order to say it's now illegal, kind of like the do not call list, it's illegal to send a fax to somebody's business without permission. And what was a $250,000 a year business evaporated instantly. But he didn't plan for that. He didn't plan for a policy to eliminate his business line. But everybody in that industry was out of a job instantly with one executive order, with one pen. We don't plan for that kind of stuff. Business can change at the drop of a hat. Business economies and economics can change at the drop of a hat. Look at all the people who are making a whole lot of money in oil shale until the Middle East decided we're going to drop the price of oil and we're going to flood the market with oil. And so when we were paying $2 and $3 a gallon for oil, people in the Southwest who were pulling oil out of their ground, they were putting hundreds of thousands of dollars in the bank on a weekly basis for the oil that was coming out of the ground. When the Middle East flooded the market with oil, the gas prices went down. We're down under $2 in most places now. But the cost to the industry made it such that pulling the oil out of the ground was no longer a profitable business. It made more sense to leave it there because you just couldn't make any profit at the cheap price of oil per barrel. That seems like a strange economy, but it's a truth. Ask anybody in the petroleum or oil business and they can tell you. I say all that to say we have to have a plan, and we should have a plan for our operation, whether it's financially, it's emotionally, it's religiously, it's relationally. We should have a plan for what am I going to do in this event or relationship. And then what will I do as a contingent if the plan that I have fails or something dynamically shifts? Or what will I do if I run down this path a certain distance and realize the plan isn't working out according to plan? Everything that I thought was going to happen isn't happening. All of my best counselors and advisors are not giving me the right advice. I listened to a guy on the radio yesterday who called into a talk show, ironically enough, not a counseling show or a religious show, but a conservative political talk show, and said, because of the election, my wife is leaving me. 20 years of marriage, no kids, but we can't agree politically on the outcome of the last election. And for that reason, she wants a divorce and she's leaving me after 20 years. And the talk show host said, sounds like you've been on the wrong path for a long time. If after 20 years of marriage, a political election season is more than your marriage can take, your marriage wasn't very strong to begin with. While I don't disagree with him, I do have to say I think there's probably a better course of action, but that's just my opinion. And I'm not here to judge. I'm guessing there are probably other things at play that they don't agree about, and the politics was just the icing on the cake or the straw that broke the camel's back. Every plan you have at some point is going to meet its end. The idea has run its course. The budget has been exhausted. The need for fax machines runs out the window, and everybody is now using email. Those eventualities are to be expected, whatever your plan is. In relationships, many relationships grow deeper and deeper and deeper and deeper until someone passes. Some relationships run their course and then you move, and you don't see each other anymore. You don't have any way to stay in contact. You don't have any deep, other than geographic boundaries, you don't have any deep reasons to keep in touch with someone. Some of my buddies from high school I still see on Facebook, and our relationship is about that deep on Facebook. Not much different than it was in high school. But when we have our class reunion, it's fun to sit down and catch up and talk about all the things that are going on in their life and all the things that are going on in mine. That's not a planned relationship. It's an incidental relationship. But I plan to have date nights with my wife. I plan to have deep conversations with my wife. I plan to pray with my wife. I plan to study with my wife. I plan to set goals for our relationship, for what we do together for the kingdom, for what we do together in our finances. I plan for those things. I plan for time with my kids to do things they love to do. I plan for those things because I'm investing in them. Do you make plans for your relationships that way? Do you make plans for those relationships that you know you need to cultivate but you haven't spent much time or attention on? Make a plan. Plans need to be financial. Plans need to be educational. Plans need to be career path. Plans need to be project-based. Plans need to be financial in the way of what will you invest in next? What's it going to cost you to do that thing? So I want to give you just a quick reading from Luke chapter 14. And I don't know the verse number. I'm going to guess it starts around 20-something. But it's under figure the cost. It says, one day, when large groups of people were walking along with him, Jesus turned to them and told them, quote, anyone who comes to me but refuses to let go of father, mother, spouse, children, brothers, sisters, yes, even one's own self, can't be my disciple. Anyone who won't shoulder his own cross and follow behind me can't be my disciple. I want to pause there for 1 second and remind you of the words of A.W. Tozer. I love these words. It's such a powerful picture. When Jesus said, I want you to take up your cross and follow me, or in this iteration, the message, he says, anyone who won't shoulder his own cross and follow behind me can't be my disciple. A.W. Tozer said, I want you to remember that the men who put the beam on their back and walked out to that hill to be slain on that cross, not one of them asked the question, what are we having for breakfast tomorrow? Not one of them. None of them walked to that cross making a plan for lunch. They had no dinner plans. They had no lunch plans. They had no breakfast tomorrow plans. They had no business plan. They had no plan. Why? Because they were absolutely and thoroughly convinced that at the moment of the cross, their life was over. This is the end. This is the execution. All the decisions that I've made up to this point have led to here. Every choice I've made, every relational investment I've made, every financial investment I've made, every decision I've made in my life brought me here. Now, in the context of our faith and our following of Christ, At that moment, we decide to follow Christ and truly surrender all. Every moment in my life has led me here. Every decision has led me here. Every investment has led me here. Every plan has led me here, for better or worse. Excuse me. The challenge is, many of us verbally make the commitment to take up our cross and follow Him, but we don't mentally make the shift that everything I've decided up to now, relationally, financially, educationally, career-wise, is done. It's dead. It's over. My plans are finished. If you've been watching all week, on Tuesday morning I talked about the idea that if you want to get people on board with your project, with what your calling is, you've got to show evidence of proof of success, fruit. You've got to be able to show this is what we've done, and this is who we've impacted, and this is how their life is better because of it. That's the only way you'll get other people on board with your project. But if you want to get God on board with your project, you've got your concept upside down. Because God is the project. God is the plan. God is the one who gives us the rules and gives us the plan and lays it all aside. And as I said before, every rule has an exception. Up to the point that we take up our cross to follow Him, we plan. How much will it cost me to buy that house? How much could I invest in it? How much can I flip it for? What's the market rate for that home? And before we decide to sign on the dotted line, we should have a plan for an exit strategy. How will I sell it? When will I sell it? Where will I sell it? How much will I put into it before I sell it? How much could I invest in it? What's the minimum? What's the maximum? All of those questions should go into the plan. But the cross changes the plan. At the cross, we surrender. Family, relationship, career, finances, even self. A.W. Tozer reminded us, no one walking out to that cross had a plan for the rest of the day, or the rest of the week, or the rest of the month, or the rest of the year, or the rest of their life. At this intersection, they move from this world to eternity. At the intersection of the cross, we move from a temporal life to a kingdom life. Our assignment, our job, our careers, our relationships are all sacrificed at the altar. Our plans are surrendered to the King. Our notions should no longer be for or about us. They should be directed to the cross. Let me go on. Is there anyone here who, planning to build a new house, doesn't first sit down and figure out the cost so you'll know if you can complete it? If you only get the foundation laid and then you run out of money, you're going to look pretty foolish. Everyone passing by will poke fun at you. He started something he couldn't finish. I remember driving through Kinshasa when I was in the Congo with the governor in one seat and the senator in the other. We drove through this area of town where these gorgeous facades of buildings were built. No windows, nothing behind the facade. And when I say nothing, I mean literally nothing. It's like the facade of the building was just the facade. And I said, what happened? And they said, well, they started on these structures and then war. They started on these new buildings for business and for homes, and then the war happened. And no one has had the money to finish them. Well, again, you can't predict a war sometimes. When you're a businessman and you're investing in something and war comes along, you just lose, and there's not much you can do to recover that sometimes. But that's what life looks like when you start a project without a plan, when you run off into something and ask God to bless it, ask God to favor it, but it's not an obedient move. It's just a plan of yours. God won't get behind your ideas unless God gave you the idea to begin with. If your vision isn't vividly inspired, first two letters of vision, vividly inspired. Inspired means it came from the Spirit, into your mind, into your body to take action. If your vision isn't vividly inspired, you're wasting your time. You can play now or pay later. You can pay now or play later, but either way, you're going to pay. Everyone passing by will poke fun at you. He started something he couldn't finish. Or can you imagine a king going into battle against another king without first deciding whether it's possible with his 10,000 troops to face 20,000 troops of the other? And if he decides he can't, wouldn't he then send an emissary to work out a peace truce? Simply put, if you're not willing to take what is dearest to you, whether plans or people, and kiss it all goodbye, you can't be my disciple. Salt is excellent, but if the salt goes flat, it's useless, good for nothing. Are you listening to this? Are you really listening? We have a mandate as believers and as leaders to make an impact. And over the last couple of days, I've been talking with the organization that I work for about what is it that we really do. And it's caused me to do some introspection and look back into the calling that I believe has been on my life from my beginning walk. From when I laid down my life, I was a firefighter. I was trained as a firefighter. It's a good career. It's an honorable job. It's a tough job. And it was the job that I chose when I went into the military. It would have been a great job to follow when I came out. But I didn't feel led by the Spirit to stay in that career field. And I still do it as a volunteer when I have the opportunity and when the need arises. I'm still trained, all that I can remember to do, and some of those things are just habit now. They happen as reflex. But it's not my career field, and I don't believe it's my calling. My calling was really simple, although the instruction on how to fulfill it wasn't. I was told 25 years ago, equip the saints for the work of the kingdom. Equip the saints for the work of the kingdom. That was my first mandate in the Spirit. My second mandate was leave the indelible mark of the fatherhood of Jesus Christ on this generation. In the conversations that we've had, I realized that what used to be $1 million investment to have a television studio, to be able to record, to be able to broadcast the ideas and the thoughts that are coming through your heart, used to be reserved for those people with millions of dollars to build a studio, to work in Hollywood, to have access to cameras and access to broadcast strength and to be able to get the message around the world. And that barrier to entry has come down significantly. Literally, any 10-year-old, 12-year-old with a cell phone can make videos on their skateboards. Some of them are making videos of absolutely ridiculous things like the knockout game and street fights and beating each other up. And I don't think that's what broadcast is for. It's just my opinion. But if the barrier to entry is going to come down from the multi-million-dollar investment to build a studio to anybody with a cell phone, then my obligation, my calling, my mission to equip the saints for the work of the kingdom, the barrier to entry has come down. But I do believe that part of my role in equipping the saints for the work of the kingdom is to lead leaders, to influence influencers. Not to just blab and hope that it matters, but to speak to those who are making plans, who are making decisions, who are influencing relationships, who are building businesses, who are building ministries, who are teaching the gospel, to challenge and encourage them that they're going to have to be willing to sacrifice some things to succeed. But they're going to have to be willing to sacrifice everything to be a disciple. See, the rule of making a plan for everything you do has one exception, and that exception is the cross. At the cross, your desire to plan for you is done. It's over. It's crucified. At the cross, your life is laid down, your plans are laid down, your relationships are laid down, and all of a sudden you are now a servant of the kingdom. And the kingdom has a plan for you. Now your job is not as much to make the plan as to discover the plan, and as God reveals that plan to you, to execute in it. Ironically, sometimes God reveals that plan as a big giant vision like he did with Joseph. And Joseph went, that's gorgeous, I want to do that, I want to be there now. And then tried to expedite the process, and God took him through many years of planning to prepare him for that vision. I see that more commonly the course. That God wants to mold us and make us into something specific before we can carry out the plan he has for us. But believe me, he has a plan for you. And before you have a chance to live in that plan, to walk in that plan, to execute that plan, God has to change you. He has to transform you into his image. He has to know that you're willing and obedient to submit. I work for a man that often I'll ask him to explain the next plan to me, and he'll say to me, all I know how to do is hear what God tells me to do. And I've learned over time to do what he tells me to do. And sometimes that makes no sense at all to me. I think the reality of our life is we look at life through a very small window, because our life is a very small window. Even if we live to be 100 years old, in the scheme of 6,000 years of human history plus, that's such a small window of time. But what God is orchestrating as a grand plan for all of humanity, your 100-year window, is a very important piece of stained glass. And your willingness to surrender, your willingness to submit, your willingness to obey his plan and not yours is absolutely critical. God needs you to pull off his plan. Not because his plan will fail without you, but because no one can do what he made you to do the way that you can do it. And his greatest glory is revealed when you are everything he made you to be. When you're willing to lay down your own plans, sacrifice your relationships, sacrifice your intentions, sacrifice your ideas at the cross, and simply follow him to do what he told you to do. I don't honestly know everything that goes into the notion of leaving the indelible mark of the fatherhood of Jesus Christ on this generation. In fact, my first question that I still haven't answered yet is, was Jesus a father? But I do know that he had a daditude. And by that I mean the true meaning of an attitude, the thoughts and emotions that go together to create an attitude. He had a certain way of looking at everyone like a dad looks at his own children. That's a start. I still got a lot of research to do. I still got a lot of discovery to do. That's like a plan that God set way out there in front of me and went, figure it out. And everything you learn along the way, everything that changes and transforms you along the way, will make you more like that little piece of stained glass that I need for my big puzzle. And in the meantime, I carry out the first mandate. If the barrier to entry to being in broadcast is going to be brought down so low, then I'm going to play. I'm going to invest what I can, my time, my talent, my treasure, my attention, into this broadcast to reach as many people as are willing to watch it, to impact as many people as I possibly can for what I have to invest in it. And I will praise him for bringing that barrier of entry down so that we can all play. But at the same time, I will raise the bar of the standard to tell the truth. See, I've also recognized one other thing in the study of mind sciences and human psychology and human relationships and social skills. For one negative word that someone hears, you're an idiot, you're a fool, you're stupid, you're fat, you're ugly, you can't succeed, I only see you in jail. For every one of those, a human being needs 17 positive words to overcome them. For every time you've been called a loser or a liar, you need to hear that the God of the universe loves you and values you and builds truth in you 17 times. So I will say it and I will repeat it over and over and over and over and over until I meet the 17-to-1 ratio. I will equip the saints for the work of the kingdom. I will lead leaders to be better leaders, to be stronger influencers, to have wisdom, to understand the word, to apply it in real life, in real time. So long as this ability to broadcast is a lowered barrier, I'm all in. And if the price changes, if the investment changes, I'll go back to the cross and ask the question, is this where you want me to invest? Or is it time to bow out and send an emissary for a peace and a truce? But right now, this is my place to fight. I'm not a UFC fighter, but I will get in the ring right here. And I will battle with you and I will battle for you. And I will lead you and I will speak to you and I will bring what God has laid on my heart to equip the saints for the work of the kingdom. I am J Loren Norris and you've been watching Tell It Like It Is TV. Have a blessed day.